Y'all, listen. I've read the story of Naaman and Elisha I don't know how many times. But this last time, the most recent time I've read it, my mind was blown. Let me explain why. So, Naaman, mighty man of valor, commander of the Syrian army, he was also a leper, which basically means he had leprosy, right? His skin was white. So, one day, the Syrians raided. They was on a raid and they took a little girl from Israel. That little girl um, was taken into Naaman's household, and she was Naaman's wife's servant, right? So one day, the little girl made a comment to Naaman's wife, and basically saying that uh, he needs to, if he wants to be healed, cured of his leprosy, he needs to go talk to the prophet in Samaria. So naturally, this interested Naaman. He went to his king, and his king wrote a letter to the king of Israel saying that basically the king of Israel said that I'm going to send my servant Naaman to you so you can heal him, right? So when the king of Israel heard this, he freaked out because he is no prophet, and there's like a lot of turmoil and a lot of crap that was going on during this time. Like Israel was just the chain, off the chain. So the king started to freak out. But then Elisha heard it, right? He heard about what's going on. So he basically said to the king, like, look, man, I got this. Just when he comes, send him to me so that they may know that there is a prophet in Israel. Naaman reaches the city. He comes up to Elisha's door. And Elisha, he didn't see Naaman. He didn't meet him. He didn't greet him. He sent one of his servants instead to answer the door. So Naaman took this as an insult, as a sign of disrespect. He's like, you know who I am? Like, dude, I am kind of a big deal. All right. Like, how dare you? Like, I'm coming to you to heal me, and you don't have the decency to come and speak with me face to face. Like, Naaman was pissed. And he was about to just turn around and walk away. Because Elisha's servant came up to him and said, okay, Elisha said, go to the Jordan River, dip yourself 7 times, and you'll be healed. That wasn't enough for Naaman because he expected more, because he came with this great caravan of gifts of silver and clothes and all this other stuff. And Elisha didn't come and see him. So Naaman was about to just go back because he's like, don't we have more? Don't we have better bodies of water back home? Like, look at this dirty river. Like, why? Like, what's so special about this river? He was just going off. So then, after he went on his tangent, Naaman's servant was like, maybe, like, what do you have to lose? Like, why don't you just do what the man of God says and see what happens? So Naaman, begrudgingly went and dipped himself in the river 7 times, like Elisha had said. And behold, Naaman was healed, right? And he was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, and so he was so excited. So he met up with Elisha, and he wanted to give Elisha these gifts. And Elisha's response struck me. Elisha was basically like, nah, I'm cool. Like, I don't want your gifts. Like, this is not why I do it. Right? And this kind of struck Naaman too. It's like, so I have all this stuff, all these gifts to give you, and you don't want it. Like, wow, that's dope. That's crazy. Okay. So this was basically like Elisha's response. He says, and I quote, I'll read this part. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and he came and stood before him. And he said, behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So accept now a present from your servant. But he said, as the Lord lives, Elisha says this, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offering or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. All right. So But then the story goes on. Like I just love how Elisha was like, that's cool, but I don't want anything from you. Like I don't want any of these gifts. And so then Naaman makes a deal with Elisha, saying, pardon me when I'm in the temple and whatever um, of his gods back home. But then this is where things get a little interesting. So as Naaman is making his way back, Elisha's servant Gehazi was like, "Hold up, let me see if I can hustle a little something. Let me see if I can get a little something from him. And Elisha won't know." So Gehazi went up there and was like, "Yo, so my master changed his mind. Why don't you give him a couple of changes of clothes, a little bit of money, blah 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 blah." Naaman was a little confused, and he was like, "Oh, okay." So he gave it to Gehazi. So then Gehazi runs, he hides it, and goes back to see Elisha. And Elisha's like, "Where'd you go?" He's like, "Oh, I just, ran a couple of errands, blah, blah, blah." Like, "Oh, so you're lying." He said, "I saw you, and I saw what you did, and blah, and some other stuff he said." And he said, "Just for that, for lying, and for your greed, like, you and your descendants are going to have leprosy." And boom, Gehazi had leprosy. And I'm just like, that's crazy. So why did this story blow my mind? The story blew my mind for many reasons. Was one, it was how it spoke to me about how people uh, can be three different ways, three different types of people. You have Naaman and his pride. Naaman, like I said, was a big deal, and he had to be humbled, and he wanted Elisha. He expected this great reverence and show of respect from Elisha. And Elisha was kind of just like, whatever. Like, you're just a person to me. And so that kind of just really struck Naaman. But his servant was like, "Yo, did not the prophet speak a good word to you? Like, wait, why don't you do it?" So he did. So Naaman had to humble himself. And this story reminds me an awful lot too of when Jesus healed the centurion servant, and when I believe it's the same story when the centurion was like, "I'm a man of authority. I say to this person, go, and they go. So all you gotta do, Jesus, is say the word." That's what this story reminds me of a lot, and that's basically what happened. So Naaman was a man of authority and expected these grand gestures and showed signs of respect from Elisha, and he didn't get it. So he had to humble himself, and when he did, he was healed. Um, and then the second aspect was Elisha himself. How Elisha just he had all these gifts in front of him, and he didn't take it. He didn't want it, and it's in stark contrast to a lot of how it's in stark contrast to how a lot of prophets and ministers today, when there is a presentation of gifts, when there is a presentation of offerings, whatever, that they just readily receive it. And I'm saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're wrong. What I'm saying is, again, as I'm always saying, is about the motivations of the heart. Uh, so like I've even seen in some places where it's expected. I'm the man of God. You need to bestow gifts and stuff to me. Like it's sickening to me. But that's another topic. What I'm going to say is, like, I admired how Elisha, how he was. Now I also think that it was also an example for the third part was how Gehazi's greed cursed him. To whereas Elisha demonstrated to where he didn't want any of Naaman's gifts and stuff, Gehazi schemed and tried to find a way to get whatever. And he ended up getting cursed for it. And it's scary though, because not only did Naaman get cursed for that, he also cursed his descendants, with leprosy because of that. So it's the moral of that story too. Well, not the only moral, but a lesson to take away from that aspect is that our decisions, our greed and selfishness also affects others more than ourselves. So but it was a fascinating story, and like aside from Naaman's pride, I believe the aspect the contrast between Elisha and Gehazi was very striking to me, and I aspire to be like Elisha in that regard, to where it's not like um, I'm seeking after gifts, I'm seeking after power, I'm seeking after anything. I just want my goal to be glorifying God. I always want that to be my motive. I always want that to be my goal, my purpose. So let us learn a lesson from Gehazi and not try to scheme and manipulate. He was actually, if you think about it, he was sort of like Ananias and Sapphira, where they tried to get over, on the people of God who try to get over and lie to the Spirit. Because if you think about it, Naaman kind of got off a little easy, where Ananias and Sapphira, they were killed. He was given leprosy. He was allowed to live, but he lived with leprosy as an outcast. But learn the lesson: integrity, honesty. Um, but it's a lot to learn as you read the story, because, like I said, it was so much that stood out to me reading that. But may we aspire to be like Elisha and be honest and selfless. May we aspire to be like Naaman, who, even though we had a bout with pride, we were able to humble ourselves and receive the blessing. And may we not be like Gehazi and seek to get ill-gotten gain. There's all sorts of proverbs that speak out against, the injustices and ill-gotten gain and things like that. So may we shift our hearts, the focus of our hearts, and to not be greedy. And that's another thing too, and that's another subject. But greed often takes a root in our lives. We try to figure out ways to get more. The eye will never get enough of seeing, and the ear will never get enough of hearing. It will never be full. Those things will never be full. So we want to make sure we control that and not try to envy and covet and try to get over on people, take advantage of people, because honestly, that happens a lot. Happens an awful lot. But again, like I said, like I aspire to be like Elisha, to where it's like I'm not self-seeking. I'm not trying to get over on people. Honest and full of integrity, and everything that I do honors God. So anyway, guys, I encourage you to read that story for yourself. I am very interested in hearing what lessons that you've learned from reading the story of Naaman and Elisha in 2 Kings chapter 5. So I hope you're well. I'd love to hear from you soon. And until the next video, God bless.